Happy New Year, community. And it's my motherfucking birthday. We're
Ow.
remembering some of our favorite guests of 2023.
Jarvis Sam.
My girl, Z Stout.
And Paris Mullen. So get your cups ready for Minoritea Report. Happy New Year. I almost said minority. Happy all the minorities out there. Happy New Year.
Having a good New Year, ain't she?
Right.
Lay out that eggnog.
Right, exactly. Shit, I'm still hungover from last night. Clearly, happy New Year, community is what I was trying to say. It's Auntie Carell.
It's Auntie Dewan.
And it's Auntie Jarrell.
Look,
it's a new year, and she acting brand new.
Stumbling into the new year. Damn.
She's calling back. She took some tips from that one AYA way back in a couple of months ago about calling Black people African Americans, but you part of the Black community. Right. She said, "I'm gonna take it one step forward." Hey, minorities.
All right. Hey, minorities. That's funny. Oh my god. Well, yeah. Anyway, happy New Year. I'm struggle busting, and we're still on vacay. But we always give you a little new content and things like that. But we had this year, like at the beginning of 2023, our goal was to level up some of the guests that we were able to obtain. And I think we did a damn good job at it.
And that does not mean to say that the people that we have
that sounded shady as hell, huh? Damn, that sounded
that
shady
does not
as hell.
mean to say that, but it simply just means we have been much more intentional, and we've been really blessed
yes.
with with the kind of content that we've been able to procure for our wonderful community. All y'all minorities
really
out there.
Starting the year off.
I am struggling. Literally in this new year, Carell is struggling. That sounded mean as hell. My bad, damn.
Because we also did have some repeats. So,
yes,
I don't want anybody to be feeling slighted, but at least
no. It was definitely the more intentionality of there were certain topics and things we were like, okay, we definitely want to hit on this. And in our mind, that was the level up, just being very, very, very intentional. Not that we weren't in the past, but just certain notes that were like, okay, if we could get this person, that would be incredible. So that's what I meant. But damn,
plus we got a lot of really great positive feedback from the community about the kinds of topics that really mean the world to you. And so we wanted to make sure that there was alignment in that.
For sure. So I'm a personally call out some of these names, all the names, if I could get this right. So Mo, I mean,
hey
Mo is
sis, that's my sis. Absolutely, I love me
so
Mo.
she always comes through, comes back, and shows up, shows out. So thank you, Mo. We love you. You know that.
And again, I'm sorry, girl, that I wasn't here on the episode. Again, another public apology to my good.
And she still owes me an apology because she's been spending a whole lot of time in New York and ain't hit a brother up once.
Ooh.
Okay, now.
Who's the next guest?
Oh, yes. So Z is our political commentator at this point. So Z, you're going to see Z probably a few times in 2024 because he's a lawyer by trade. So he just understands a lot of that jargon, is able to break that shit down in ways that we potentially can't, or we could, but it's just better to hear from him. So yeah, Z, thank you, boo. And Black 50 gay states, or Black 50 states. He had Black. God, y'all help me out. I'm struggling.
Black history.
It's a Black. What is it called again? 50 states, and then he already had
Black
gay 50 states. That's what I was trying to get
states.
So yeah, so gay 50 states already out there, but he's working on Black 50 states. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. Jarvis was dope.
Yes, absolutely.
Jarvis was really dope. Just from the DEI lens, that was an incredible episode. And maybe I should say these episode titles. So Jarvis was 219, Z was 218, Mo was 214. For all our new folks from DNR, if you checking out this episode, hey boos, welcome. Paris is another great episode.
I enjoyed Paris a lot.
Right?
Yes.
And I told y'all this. I'm sorry, in the Market Days episode, did I tell you I saw Paris at Market Days?
No.
Yeah. ran into Paris at Market Days, that sidetrack. And yeah. So we didn't even like it was all after the fact. We're like, we didn't even take a picture, nothing. But I like had gotten the sidetrack and it was on the upper floor, the third floor there, and came around the corner. I'm like, Paris? And he's like, Carell? And the funny thing is I had seen Nathan earlier in the day, and he's like, oh yeah, Paris is out of town, but he gets back today. And so I was like, oh, I need to hit him up, blah, blah, blah. And you know how Market Days is, the day be going like that. And I hadn't hit him up yet. And he was like, why hadn't you hit me up then? I was like, Carl, time traveling. So yeah, Paris at Market Days. So
yeah,
Paris was a great one. We had Craig Seymour. Now
yes.
this was a good episode. Oh,
so much
stories. It was the I don't endorse this. I just want to make sure that y'all know.
It was the Barry Hankerson beef for me. He said Tony Braxton robbed the grave for that title from Aaliyah, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's why Barry was mad. That is why he was mad. And that was a two-parter. That was episode 222 and 223. Right. Gayish.
Yes, our babies over there.
Exactly. That's our boos over at Gayish. They always be looking out for us, honestly. So
they real ones. They are some real ones.
They are some real ones, right?
Yeah,
they really are.
When we talk about like white people being allies and things like that, they be stepping up, showing out, and looking out for Black and brown folks. So
1,000%.
1,000%. We had Seth Eric back on here. Seth Eric is so incredible. So incredible. Like, talk about stories.
Honey.
For days.
He said, I was in a hostel in South Africa.
Didn't have no water.
Seth is incredible.
I can't even.
Oh my God. Yeah, Seth Eric, that episode is 226. If you have not listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode because he's just a different, amazing human being. And the stories he has, there's a freedom about him that is so incredible to me. That like it's just not my nature. Yeah. That I'm like, damn, I wish I could be that free and just be in a hostel in South Africa for a month and figure that shit out. Yeah. Like my brain just does not operate that way.
And what I love about him as well too is just, and especially coming on the podcast, just adding to the fact that Black people are not a monolith, right? 100%. Because us three aren't the same, and then we're also not the same like him too, right? Mm-hmm. So you got 4 completely different type of Black folks as well too. So I just love it. I absolutely do.
Oh man. And then we also, let's see here, who else we have? We had Z on again. Oh, and then we had the legendary Frank Gatson.
Yes.
Baby.
I mean,
that was incredible. That was absolute, like, talk about somebody that is a treasure trove of experiences. Like, he has been there for so many cultural moving moments and has been integral to those moments. And to be able to like peel the curtain back just a little bit and peek into his world and what he's experienced and the influence that he has, it's
iconic.
More people need to know his name.
Yes. And honestly, when I said leveled up a minute ago, that's literally that was popped in my head just because he's legendary for decades. So it's me needing to level up, it's everybody leveled up, because to be around, like you said, so many cultural moments like that, everybody should know his name. Everybody should know his story. And he has so much more to share. And shout out to the YWCA up there in Milwaukee. I know their gala just was a few weeks ago, and it sounds like it's going to be a yearly thing. So continue to donate to that charity. Then we had Angelica Ross, y'all.
Baby.
Houseway. Houseway.
Let me tell you, I still got my shirt over here from what I wore on the podcast when she was there because my mama got me this shirt. So I didn't show the full shirt, but I had to represent for Pose because I've been a fan from ever of the show. So having Angelica Ross on the show, and I know this is not Angelica Ross on the shirt, y'all, so don't come for me, but I'm talking about Pose, the show that was one of my favorite shows, okay, where Angelica Ross was on, okay, and where Miss Auntie Shar said a few of the people could act.
A few. We said last episode how he be clowning people. Drive-by clowning us.
Listen, the last thing I want is to have any misinterpretation, any cloudiness around what I really mean.
You're right. And literally to have her on when everybody was talking about all the stuff she was talking about. That was a nice little snag. That was a nice
Yeah.
little snag, if I do say so
Absolutely.
ourselves. Like, good job, gentlemen.
Yes.
We over here looking like Barbara Walters and shit and Oprah. Oh, that's that story. Blossom. Oh, that's another
Yes.
one. That's another one. And thing about Blossom is like, there's just been this communication for years because she's followed us for years and we followed her for years, and just to finally have her on,
Yeah.
incredible.
This just, as you can see by the list of names that Girl has just, shared with us, when you think about our community, not just, the Black community, but like there are so many different experiences. And when we talk about being intentional about who we bring on, why we're bringing on, and having that level of representation, we're very fortunate to have this platform, but also provide this platform for so many different voices and experiences to be able to share, those with everyone. So
yeah. And then Travis is another one that kind of snuck in there like just a few weeks ago, just to hear his story and his situations and things like that. Like, again, the breadth, and honestly, people are like, oh, well, he's not Black and brown. We're queer as well, ho. And they hear some of those stories to make sure that we're hearing stories of allies and other situations. Because even like a lot of the Ask Your Auntie questions we get about like small town America and things like that, bridging all those gaps and those intertwinedness. Is that a word, Dewan? It's not. It is today. I'm still struggling here.
Coin.
It's the first of the year. You can make it what you want, as it is already.
Of it all. So yeah. So and I mean, and then honestly, there were other guests that kind of fell through that we're still trying to get on here and things like that like still on like the wish list and things like that. But thank you honestly to all of the guests that have come on. They all know that they're welcome back. There's some that people are like, no, y'all need to get this person back like ASAP. So we're working on that too. But yeah, like it's just been very cool. Very just cool. I don't know. It's still a little mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. And also, speaking of guests too, they're not necessarily guests, but shout out to those of the aunties that filled in for us.
Oh my God, yes.
Too, like Auntie Landon and
Jarrell,
and Marco for filling in for me as well. Like,
oh, hold on, I skipped over Marco and Tony just because it's just like that's our Marco and Tony
family.
Duh.
Relationship podcast. Yes. Say their names.
Check them out. Say that, right. Put some respect on their names.
Right.
And the reason
our
why
DNR network sisters.
We just knew. So yes, Marco and Tony, they know we love them. But sorry to skip over because it was on the spreadsheet because we already just knew the time when we had you on. So overlook that. But blame it on our spreadsheet and probably me, and not our hearts. But yeah, Marco, Jarrell, Landon, thank you, Boots, because they're just as COVID has kind of opened up, or post-COVID world or whatever this is now. Like, just life gets a little more busy on our end, but we're like, oh shit, hold on, who can help us out this week and fill in right quick because life be life and the work be working.
And bitch, sometimes we need some breaks. We need to get out here and do some things. So we really appreciate y'all for stepping in and helping assist us out.
So on that note, we're going to go over some of our favorite just guest segments, honestly. And again, there was too many to choose from. And so this is not saying they were the best of the best or the worst of the worst or the middle of the middle. It's just like moments that stood on our brain for one way or the other. And let's see here. Who you got, Dewan?
So you mentioned at the top of the call, Jarvis, and this was episode, what was this? Episode 219. Please go back and check out that whole episode. But the first part of that episode is where we really had an opportunity just to hear a little bit more about Jarvis. And I got to know Jarvis through work context. He works in the DEI space. He owns an organization called the Rainbow Disruption. So if you are not familiar with that, or you're doing kind of DEI work or whatever, and you like a partner, I highly recommend you all go out there and check them out. But for too often, we have conversations from our own personal lived experience. Jarvis is doing the work. He's in those predominantly white spaces, and he's the owner of this organization. So when we talk about investing back into the community, like every dollar that goes to him and his organization goes back into the Black community, but he's doing the good work. And it wasn't a super heavy conversation because we definitely started talking about a lot of different things in terms of intersectionality. How do you drive, how do you make movement within your organization, even if you're not in the DEI space? So I think this is a really great segment to revisit so that it re-anchors us in the why that we, the three of us, are doing this episode or doing this
especially as we
podcast.
gear up to go back to work after this holiday.
Honey, you got to look at all them faces.
So the DEI world always is interesting to me because, and luckily I work in corporate America for a company that actually has a Black woman as their head of DEI, which is not the norm. A lot of the space is still, at least the high level, ran by white people. For probably, I don't know the percentages, but I would guess way over 50%, 60%, 70%.
Yep.
How do we, and especially for folks that might not be at the high positions, what steps can we take day to day when we know certain companies might be led by white folks in the DEI space, and not to say they're not doing a great job. There's a lot of folks that are, but there are still a lot of folks that have a lot of blind spots that they, even though are the head of DEI, might not realize they're incorporating into the culture of a corporation. What can someone that's sitting at their desk day to day, not at that level, do to inspire change at their jobs?
I'm going to answer this twofold because I want to talk to those people that are sitting in those roles, assuming that they're a part of the community or that somebody will share it out to them. And here's what I'll say. And I will specifically speak to cis white women who are sitting in head of DEI roles and queer white men who are sitting in head of DEI roles. I need you to understand the positions with which you occupy come with a lot of positional authority, the opportunity for political activism, and what's more, a ton of capital. Be conscious about how we may still be reifying the same systems of identity oppression that we feel in real life. My homegirl Melissa from GLAAD, I just adore her. She posted on LinkedIn yesterday with a preamble caveat that she started not to post this. And what it was an image highlighting in the work to advance LGBTQ plus rights, don't forget about the racism that you're already packing alongside yourself as well. And I feel obligated to call this out because I have and continue to face far more racism in the LGBTQ plus community than I ever have homophobia in the Black community. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist because the deep roots that we have to the church and religion and a variety of other facets contribute to that. But I feel like the Black community has been on a journey of reckoning with how we handle and navigate our kin folks who are of the LGBTQ plus community. We are not having enough conversations about that and the impact of racism within our own communities. I say this to say, if you do not exist at an intersectional identity at the basis of racial minoritized status and gender minoritized status or minoritized status or marginalization on the basis of sexual orientation, you got to really think about the privilege that you still hold in the world. If your privilege exists in such a way that until you tell people about your elements of marginalization, they don't know, that you can intrinsically cover those experiences, be aware of the roles with which you occupy, because the advocacy with which you provide may not be a felt experience for others. What's more, when we have folks that look like us and when we have Black women who are occupying these seats, we need to be able to give her the space, time, and energy to recognize she is an expert practitioner and professional in her own right. Her identity is a part of that, and so is her lived experience. But do not assume that because she does not come from the same experience as you, that she can't do her job. I will tell y'all a real talk example. At one of my previous employers, I encountered a lot of pushback and engagement when navigating big topics connected to Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, in that a couple of folks within the organization made statements, claims, and assumptions that because I am a queer identified Black man, that all of my work and attention are only centered around those lived experiences. First of all, it is disrespectful and it's unfounded. Because I would happily let you know that a lot of the work that I did in my bachelor's thesis was actually about Deng Xiaoping's reign in late mid-century China. and the impact of how you shifted
Get them together.
academic and
not the receipts,
right?
Not the
Get
receipts.
them together. They said there was Tamika and Candy and Tiny. They said, hold on.
She said, let the record show.
It is
First point.
It's such a flawed assumption. It's fallacious in nature because I don't see people doing that to cis white men, especially cis straight white men that are occupying seats of CFOs, CMOs. We don't ask them to produce their receipts on the best marketing campaigns or innovation tactics that they launched. So don't come at us when we occupy these same seats along the way. And, I took some time to help those couple of folks in the community understand my commitment to solidarity, allyship, advocacy, and activism, and that I have always fought for that community. I have always positioned opportunities for viewing them as my brethren and sisters in this work. My only expectation is that the same happens when my community is out front. To your other question, though, around what can we do when we're sitting at the desk trying to grapple and navigate this, there are really 4 things employees care about: transparency, visibility, accountability, and belonging. Center and sit yourself in those and recognize that transparency is only as useful as the information that we have. We know what to do with it. This is why I love to get the tea from people, but if I can't do anything with or about it, spread it. If there's that, it's not that helpful. And so I tell people, understand what are those values that you want to bring to the table and be unmoving and unwavering with those. That is what authenticity is. I say this a lot in different lectures that I do, y'all. I do not bring my full self to work because my full self does not belong in anybody's corporate setting.
You know what's funny? I was literally having the same conversation with my DEI team today. Not today. It was earlier this week. And I'm struggling. I've been personally struggling with this concept of bringing, because we've heard all different iterations: bring your whole self, bring your full self, bring your authentic self. And I struggle with that because there are so many parts of ourselves that don't belong at work. When I'm looking at dick pics on Twitter,
that's a word
that don't belong in the office place.
Right.
Sorry.
It's a true statement.
My whole self, I might bring 2%.
Right, that jock and that leather daddy hat I got, that ain't going to work today.
That ain't. I'm getting a call from HR real quick. I bring my whole stuff to work.
Honey, a word.
I hurt somebody's feelings.
Even though, let's be clear, y'all know, pre-pandemic, the grinders used to be popping the biggest when you were in the corporate office.
Honey.
I told this story on here where how I found out what my manager was gay because I heard the grinder go off.
Yeah.
I heard that and I was like, yes, girl, get him. Get him.
Now we know. And knowing is half the battle.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, I center around this idea of listen, there's a set of core values that are important to me, and that's what I'm going to bring to the workplace. And that is what I'm going to check people's experience with how they interact with me and how I interact with them based on those sets of values. And when those values are called into question or put in conflict, then that is the moment where I have to either recuse myself from a situation, remove myself from an environment, or quit.
Yeah. What do you say to an average, person who's working in a corporate setting who, they may have, some DEI initiatives. They may have a chief diversity officer. They may have these things. What do you say to a person who wants to better understand whether or not they're working for a company that's doing things in a performative way or actually doing things intentionally and with focus and strategy to drive meaningful action? Because I know I sit in this space all day long, so I can see behind the velvet curtain who's grinding the gears and turning the knobs and all that kind of stuff. So, but for your average employee, no, it's the wizard, boo. It's the wizard. It's the wizard. He back there. So, but your average employee, they have no idea. And depending upon how their company is structured and where they sit within their organization, whether they're at home or in an office or whatever, they may have certain experiences, but they might not have an idea as to whether or not this is a company where I could truly grow my career and I could align myself from a retention perspective. I can get engaged. I know that they support me, da, 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 da. What do you say to those folks? How do they know the difference?
Yeah, there's two things. It's so funny. You call it a velvet curtain, child. I think half these companies are definitely giving Velcro. Like you just snatch it, you snatch
it. Venetian blinds.
Absolutely, absolutely. It ain't quite there. I think the question of performance is an interesting one because there's a lot of performative engagement that we see, particularly in Fortune 1000s right now. There's a lot of performative engagement that we see through governmental agencies, and there's a lot of performance that we see at university levels right now. Starting with corporations, I often encourage people, take a look at that employee experience and then that consumer experience. If your company is more comfortable speaking to the Black consumer than they are to the Black employee, we have a problem. If that was,
get my drink.
If they are open to changing that logo on LinkedIn to be rainbowed and beautiful from June 1, but by the time it hits June 30th at 11:59 Australian Standard Time, they already done pulled it, or they have a timer set on it. That's performance. If they are unwilling to take a stance and outline a perspective, I get it. We're all navigating dynamics. And this is why I term myself as a business leader who happens to work in the DEI space, and that I use this as a means to help organizations realize their full social and economic potential. I think about this through the lens of how we run and operationalize a business. So I get it. There are constraints with government, particularly for government contractors that we got to think about. There are constraints with people and teams and consumers that we have to think about. But you can have a point of view on a topic, particularly if that topic impacts the folks that represent the largest proportion of your consumer base, or they are representative across a group of employees that are doing the work for you. And I say this specifically to organizations that work in retail spaces or orgs that have distribution centers, because the majority of the folks that are going to be in those spaces look a lot like us. And so you get into what I call the prepositional dilemma. You have the folks that are big and at corporate who work at an organization, and then you have those folks that are in distribution centers and retail who work for an organization. And that 4-act complex makes a big difference, because a lot of the folks who work for the organization tend to be underrepresented minorities and tend to be those folks that help to amplify those numbers in those annual impact reports that we see for these organizations. Number 2, does your company disaggregate that data? I don't want to know what the full percentage and representation is of just people of color. Our experiences, our dynamics, the contours and dimensions of who we are so different. I want to know specifically, what are you doing to grow and build representation for Black communities, Hispanic and Latino populations, Asian American and Pacific Islander populations, and beyond that land acknowledgement that you have become so fond of reading lately, what are you doing to give voice, liberation, and sovereignty through the lens of representation and economic development to First Nations and Native and Indigenous populations? That is you giving me this number together limits my ability to make effective decisions, because every win that you have of somebody that has even a percentage of connection to the community, you celebrate yourself. I believe it sounds a lot like the rhetoric that was used to justify the 1-drop rule. So let's think about how some of these
He's preaching today, y'all.
the way we interact in our day-to-day environments. Get comfortable disaggregating it so that we can do better by intention and deliberateness.
I think it's an interesting state of affairs when people are. Let me take one step back and say that the pandemic has completely changed the landscape of working, full stop, period.
Yeah.
Because we have a significant number of individuals who have moved from working in office, and that was their only experience, to working 100% at home, to now starting to navigate kind of a transition back to whatever return to office is going to look like for their particular organization. We're still, albeit we're acting like COVID never happened now, it's still visceral in a lot of our minds of what that was like, walking around Lysoling and bleaching everything and wearing masks and da-da-da-da-da. And then you also have the mass exodus of the baby boomer generation from the workplace, which is taking a lot of institutional knowledge, taking a lot of also institutionalized and systemic practices that historically disenfranchised a lot of us. And we're replacing those individuals in some part, not totally, with the youngest of generations that have grown up with images of Black and brown people and queer people, and I know that I'm using these umbrella terms, but just for simplicity, and not to diminish anyone's personal experience, but grown up with diversity in the forefront. That people like us have fought for, and people that came before us that have fought for and died for, so that could happen. So it's a very interesting thing, because the pressure that is being put on companies today from employees who are saying, I am not willing to bring my talent to an organization that I'm not aligned with their values and how they operate and what their culture is palpable. But there are still people today in roles and in companies that are not aligned with their values, that don't really see them as whole individuals or as meaningful contributors to their workplace culture, but they see them as a number. That's what I mean by that. And there's a lot of performative work. You mentioned that your kin folks say you work in affirmative action, but this harkens back to affirmative action, where there were people put in place just to say, I got my quota filled. And so, we had all these organizations coming out with all of these big commitments, following George Floyd. And I know you and I are seeing in this space a lot of rollback, and particularly a lot of companies who did not deliver against the things that they said that they were going to deliver on. The money that they were going to be investing into certain organizations, the roles that they were going to be creating within their organizations, you name it. And so it can be disheartening, for people who are in this world, or in this world, and people that are just doing their regular jobs, to figure out, where do I fit within this? And do I need to keep running the rat race? Because people are thinking about their financial security. They're thinking about the things that their job affords them. And I would love to
I'm tired of doing that 80 font.
So I would love to I say all that to say that I would love for you to just share a little bit about the decision that you made to move away from a corporate focused role to doing your own thing, because a lot of people want to do their own thing in some way, shape, or form, but they're struggling with that transition and how to make that happen. And the notion of, I'm giving up something that, particularly in the Black community, we all grow up learning about, you got to get that good job, right? And good job just meant security, which there is no security in corporate America. So talk to us a little bit about that.
It's exactly that. It's this concept of security and safety. I talk a lot about my mama, because she's like my best friend along with my siblings. But she did not understand my decision up front. She did not. The idea of leaving corporate America, all of these things that you've worked for, that you've worked toward to receive this level of positional power and positional authority, and to leave it. And in fact, people will often say, oh, I can't believe you left XYZ company. I heard it after every single company I left. I can't believe you left Google. I can't believe you left Snapchat. I can't believe you left Nike. And there were a couple of things that I came to realize. There's a reason y'all like me here. I'm contributing something. But if that argument is true, and that the impact to which I'm contributing is so deeply valued in this organization, if I chose to invest in myself that much more, that intrinsic value doesn't go away. It's like certain investments that we make in the stock market. There are some portfolios that will just continue to produce greatness because they're tried and true, because they've been pressure tested. I've been tested a time or two, a lot in the space.
They tried it.
They do. And so if all of those things are true, the impact of me to be able to go out and do this on my own should be that much more impactful.
Yeah. That whole episode, there was just so much to unpack, honestly, because even though this was maybe like you said, it's not a heavy conversation, but it's just like a lot of insight, a lot of intellectual thinking about it and different ways to approach it and what companies should be doing. But then even later in that episode, y'all should definitely check out again episode 219, talking about like his drag life and building the drag Voltron, and we did a little curiosity and things like that. And the braids were popping in that episode. Come on now.
Yes.
Honestly, I'm still trying to meet his braid lady though, for real, down there in Portland. But also, like last year in October, I got to go to his Disrupt Con here in Seattle at the Seattle Art Museum, and it's just great to see our guests thriving in their element as well too. And I think, like Dewan said, it just makes this that much more important, and reminding us of why these moments need to happen.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right, Terrell, who you got, boo? Or is it? Yeah,
well,
you next.
It's me. And let me say, I have to say, for me, it's one of my good Judys, one of my good girls from back when I lived in Minnesota. Miss Z herself, our political correspondent for Minority. And she was on twice last year. And like Carell said in the previous episode, I think earlier this episode, you will see Z on here quite a bit this year. Just because it's important that when we talk about, especially like current times and the politics and voting and knowing your rights, it's important to be up to date, and it's important to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and making sure we're getting the correct facts out there, that we're not just in this topic talking about opinions, but we're talking about facts, because the facts is what matters at the end of the day. And we want to make sure that people are getting the truth out there. So for me, it was episode 231 last year when we talked about the Supreme Court affirmative action. And baby, that was a conversation. Here it is.
So let's backtrack. So we were kind of like in our little glee moment. It was just a nice recording last week. We record and we wake up the next fucking morning and all hell starts to break loose. And we're like, oh my God. So the first one that broke loose, and obviously we're talking about the Supreme Court rulings that have occurred over the last week or 2 weeks at this point when the episode comes out, was around affirmative action. And we'll let Z be the professional of breaking this shit down. But yeah, we'll let you even just, and I'm sure people know what's happened by now, but if not, give them the lowdown of what happened there, Z.
Well, I mean, what the Supreme Court in essence really said is that race can't be a factor in regards to the admissions process in and of itself. And so an individual's criteria, background, upbringing can be referenced in an essay. And then, then that can be taken into account. But just for the simple fact that somebody is Black can't be held, can't be a plus factor in the admissions process. And these were two different cases. There was UNC and Harvard. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson recused herself from the Harvard case because I believe she was on the Board of Regents for Harvard during that time. Hey, some of the other justices should take heed in regards to when they should be recusing. So that's just my little soapbox side there. But she did write an amazing dissent in regard to the UNC case that we really recommend people read. I mean, she's taken up for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, who used to write just like the most spectacular dissents in regards to it, and some of them really came to fruition later on when the composition of the court changed. But the challenge here is that they were saying that all Black folks don't have the same lived experience. I'm just kind of paraphrasing it in a framing that's a little more neutral, I guess. That all Black people don't have the same experience, and so to give all Black people a plus factor when not all Black people have struggled, this is their argument. They're caring about
the top 1% of Black people,
right? Well, and here's the thing. I mean, most of the Black and brown folks that are in these elite institutions are people of privilege. They're already legacy. They're already there. You know what I mean? When you look at the percentage of Black and brown folks that come from, first generation or at or below or just above the poverty line, it only ends up being 2 to 3%. I mean, it's not a large percentage of people. And so, the argument was that, that the Asian kids are being, duped out of their positions at Harvard when there were no Asian folks that came forward in regards to trying to say that they were part of it. And this is part of unfortunately, I mean, I really hate saying this about the court, but this is part of the scam that's happened recently as it relates to the court is from law school. I mean, first year in law school, 2007 and 8, everybody takes the exact same classes in law school. And they're like, courts don't take hypotheticals. They take real cases in controversy where there are real people that came forward in regard to real grievances and real issues that happen. And sometimes you may have standing one day and then you don't have standing later on when the case goes forward. And so that's the thing that really irks me in regard to this. And I kind of took a break over the weekend after getting the news in regard to these cases. So I just, it was good that I was off the grid, but I wasn't able to then read up on a lot of the really amazing, analysis from some of our constitutional scholars in regards to how some of these matters really got through to the court.
And they were they were saying that the organization accused both universities of violating the 14th Amendment, specifically that equal protection clause.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting how, depending what justices are on the bench, how they can interpret it the way they want to interpret it, which makes folks that look like you and I feel like, what are they there for? Even though we know there's always slight biases, it's hard to get around your biases a little bit. But now this seems more than a bias. This seems like it is an agenda.
Yes, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
And it's just like, we already have lost trust in so many branches of the judicial system. And now to see this on such a large scale is so disheartening, because it's like, what the fuck did we do? Because now we know once they come up with these rulings, it's going to take a whole nother 2, 3, 4 generations to try to turn this shit back around the way it should be. And that's why we always preach voting and being registered to vote and things like that, because it's all intertwined. And we always say at that lower level, because they are already grooming the next generation of judges to do the same shit and change some other shit in the future. So, but what are the next steps in your eyes that we can either fight against this or what? Like, I don't even know where to go from here.
well, just to provide some clarity too, part of this is, and it's interesting in regards to the evolution of language, as well as the evolution as it relates to the integration in regards to Black folks into the broader society, white society, right? In the 80s, being colorblind was a step in the right direction, because everything was colored, everything was black and white, everything was segregated. So to come about to see yourself as being colorblind, not seeing color the way that our ancestors saw color, is really what it kind of came down to, was a step in the right direction. But we've moved past that now. Now we've gone from, hey, being colorblind isn't good enough because you're not recognizing the inherent biases and institutional racism and systems of oppression that are here. So yes, being colorblind was a step better than the segregated life, right? But then we've moved on to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And to seeing people's whole selves and taking intersectionality into part of the discussion and everything, right? The Supreme Court's late. They're still stuck in the 80s in regard to the mindset of being colorblind, and that was their argument in regard to this, was saying, we just, in order to be able to get rid of racism, we just need to stop talking about racism. You know what I mean? That it's, we elected a Black president, so racism solved. And so if we say that racism is solved, I know it's laughable. So saying that racism is solved according to the law doesn't, and this is one of the things that important thing that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said. Just because you say that racism is gone from a legal perspective doesn't mean that that's how it's going to happen on the ground for people. And
how about Juneteenth? How about Juneteenth?
There you go. Prime example, right? I mean, we have too many examples over why do we have to keep reaffirming the Civil Rights Act? Why do we have to keep reaffirming voting rights acts, right? It's because the laws have been on the books, and the people that enforce the laws or are tasked with enforcing the laws haven't had an incentive to do it. And that's one of the reasons why it's been important for us to have a federal legislature and a strong federal government, especially in regards to states like some of the more conservative states in the South and everything, because if they choose not to move forward and protect people, that's when the federal government really should be stepping in as it relates to that. All right, so after that, with that recap, to go back to your question in regards to what's the next steps, Congress always has the ability to be able to update things, right? And so part of the thing that I think to find a little grain of truth in regards to what the justices were saying is, it's been all these years. Y'all want to update the law? We'll give us some updated information, some updated standards. That's something different that we'll look into. But we aren't the country that we were 40, 50 years ago. True, right? And remember, affirmative action was just one little teeny tiny thing that we were doing to try to overcome hundreds of years of oppression and Jim Crow and the black codes and all that kind of stuff. Just one little teeny tiny thing. And so they're saying it's not the same country that it was then. So Congress always has the ability to be able to come up with something new as it relates to this. I know that there's currently a lawsuit that's being filed against Harvard as it relates to legacies. So you look at legacy folks. So these are folks whose parents, grandparents, somebody in their family has attended, or they're big donors. Roughly 30% of these amazingly prestigious institutions are legacy folks, and those are the folks that are getting in for just
biased,
not doing. Oh yeah,
and they're the ones taking the spots of people thinking they didn't get in for their grades, while these other people ain't getting the grades, don't know shit.
Like, they don't have any incentive to know shit
because their daddy's name or their grandfather's name is on that building over there.
Right. Period.
So one of the cool things that Kajanki did in her dissent was she broke it down. She's like, there's 7-generation difference between the black person that's applying for to get in there now and the legacy. And so how can you say that it's equal in regard to that, right? It's none of the fault of the two applicants that come forward. You have a white applicant that's a legacy for 7 generations, and you have a black applicant that's their first time here. Looking at everything equal, the thing is that they have a 40, I think it was UNC, because that's right. She was talking about the UNC case and she recused from the other one. But, there's a 40-factor panel aspect that they're looking for differences in regards to folks. And they want people to interact with folks that they normally wouldn't interact with in their life, because it's better for them and it's better for everybody. That's the college experience. Can't tell you how many folks here in Minnesota that I've met that are in elected positions or appointed positions, and they said, I never met a black person until I went to college. And they only live 20, 30 miles outside of the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And so there's a benefit to broader society by having people interact with folks that they normally wouldn't see, that's not in their circle of influence, because it's better for everyone. And that's part of what the college admission folks look at. They're looking at the holistic kind of aspect of admissions and not just grades, because there's people that have grades. There's all kinds of folks that have grades, amazing grades. So what else? What else do you bring to the table? What else are you going to be contributing?
And I've been reading just random articles just to see, because obviously this fallout is going to affect just more than the immediate of universities and things like that. Because people will try to interpret it the way they need to. We already seen in the DEI space, some high profile folks in corporate America retire or happen to be leaving the company, and how they want to
a lot of them are black
gloss
women.
it over.
A lot of them are black women.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's just I'm almost curious, Dewan, that's your space. That is your world. What was your first thought hearing this and seeing potentially someone like your even probably peers in the realm being laid off and things like that, and how to fight that internally, saying, no, this is still important for companies to maintain these positions?
I feel so I have a couple of thoughts. One, I feel any company that has taken a stance about rolling back initiatives that support Black and brown and underprivileged and historically unrecognized individuals and disenfranchised individuals, that says a lot about that particular company. So no matter what they say about their values or their code of conduct, you look at a company's actions and that tells you a lot. So to me, there were a bunch of companies that were out there faking until we make it and throwing money so that they wouldn't get blamed. It was a PR thing versus it was them really invested in and understanding the benefits, the real benefits of investing in having a diverse talent pool. I mean, there have been studies for the last 50 to 60 years that reinforce the idea that when you bring diverse perspectives and experiences to the table, this is not just a color thing or a gender thing. It is an experience thing, a diversity of experiences that also happens to prioritize women of color, people of color. When you're able to do that, the company maximizes on everything, maximizes on productivity, maximizes on profitability, maximizes on innovation and ideation and the ability to bring those things to life. Just think about it. I read an article. I'm trying to remember exactly where it came from, but there was an article that did a study on specifically for Black people and Hispanic, Latin heritage individuals on how much time do they spend in corporate code switching.
Oh, yeah.
Upwards to 20%. I think that it was anywhere between 13 to 20% of individuals' time, raw dollars and minutes of the day spent on code switching, meaning my boss communicates this way and everybody else on my team communicates that way. So I have to change the way that I even write this email or write this proposal or communicate so that I match that style. So that it wouldn't impede my career. That's code switching. You're basically saying Black people do it all the time. That's why we know what it sounds like when we say put on your white people voice on the phone. So, so I bring that all back to say that when we start seeing things like this happening, it says a lot about those organizations that are making those choices, and it's going to be seen as bad form in the long term because you have a whole millennial force that has entered the workforce, and you have a whole gang of baby boomers that are now exiting, not because they want to or whatever. Them bitches 70 years old. They tired. So they leaving. So a lot of the institutional knowledge, a lot of the institutional support for that kind of thinking of the status quo is exiting. You got a whole bunch of people that are entering the workforce that have a huge voice in profits and marketing, that understand social media. It can tear a company down in a heartbeat. So I think in the long term, these decisions to roll back the investments in DEI initiatives and reduce staff and all that body of work, they are going to suffer because the employees that work for the company see that they have large networks, and the people that are applying for jobs right now, the number one question that people that are in corporate that are asking as part of their interviews when someone says, hey, do you have any questions for us? Tell us about your culture. What's important to you and how are you demonstrating that through your actions? That's the number one thing. So I think I get that a lot of companies are folding to the political pressures of, their conservative constituents. I get that, and customers and clients. But at the end of the day, in the long term, it's just like when you think about anybody that was a Nazi sympathizer.
Right.
You don't care what their reasoning was. You just know that they sympathize. So I think that these companies, this is a bad PR move for them, because when the smoke clears and the light shines through and we see who you really are, there's a lot of brand new companies that are popping up and becoming really profitable in the spaces that these oligarch organizations are leaving behind.
Yeah. And the weird thing too is obviously they do these exit polls and things like that just to try to get a sense of what America's feeling, or a subset of America, because it's hard to really get what America's really feeling, because people really don't gonna really tell you in these polls. But it's odd, even just for this one, they said there's a clear majority, that 57% that voted. This is based on prior, this is California. So California kind of got done with affirmative action maybe 25 years ago. And let's say it's a clear majority, 57% voted against allowing state and local entities to consider such factors in public education deployment and contracting decisions. But now they've been able to start doing research on that. And what they thought was going to happen did not happen. And the diversity has been lacking throughout California at the universities. And it sucks that they did, I think they even presented that case to the Supreme Court, saying, okay, here's a prime example. And California always leads the way for all this other shit in our country. And it didn't work. Mm-hmm. It's not what you think is going to happen. And it just sucks that, again, you have data to back up this. So it's not misopinions. It's actual data showing what's going to occur. And that's scary across this country. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Cal State system, California is a unique place where people can get a certain number of signatures and you can have your proposition go on there and people can vote for it. One of the things that I'm a Californian, so I can speak about this from firsthand. One of the things that we as Californians hate is the fact that this big old booklet, it's like one of those old, it ends up looking like a Yellow Pages in regards to all the text, y'all know what the Yellow Pages is? In regards to all these propositions. And they come up with names that are disingenuous. they have recaps and assessments of it that are disingenuous. So you think you're voting one way and it ends up being the other way. So there's this whole big mess in regards to it. But remember, California, even though it's a very liberal state, right? We're 50-50 in regards to a lot of things. So there's lots of things that have passed in California that you wouldn't have expected, like, not allowing LGBT teachers to teach in the 70s during the Harvey Milk time, right? The Anita Bryant stuff. California voted no for that. Defining marriages between a man and a woman. California voted, passed that constitutional amendment. So even though it's this very liberal place from a voter's situation, like there's a swing because we have a lot of rural spaces in the state of California. And so the UC system is the step up system in the colleges in California. I went to a Cal State, so Cal States are easier to get in, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's been the case for over 10 years, and they saw that the number of minorities enrolled that got accepted and ended up going to these colleges, 50% drop across the board. Data that's there. When they got rid of affirmative action, so it's like, here's the data. It's showing that it's working. It's doing something. And if you don't have this one little teeny tiny tool helping out, this is what happens. Justices didn't care.
So hopefully they're able to find some loopholes. I'm sure that there's always loopholes in every situation, and hopefully it's to the benefit of our communities, even though we know a lot of times they stack it against us, and we still find a way to be great and amazing and incredible. So it's just another time that we just gotta show up and show out again. So when we get that,
really quick. My insight for folks that have kids that are Black and brown that are applying for these colleges: make sure that they do that. Make sure that they do that essay, and make sure that essay recaps what their lived experience is, especially any challenges that they've had to overcome as it relates to their race. Make sure that it's known from that perspective, because that was a carve out that was listed in the Supreme Court decision. But as Dewan indicated, that this is likely going to branch out into other areas in regards to corporate and DEI stuff and everything, which is unfortunate.
So as we saw, based at the end of 2023, we were right. We saw a lot of shit happen.
Yeah, like what? Like. And this is one of the episode titles. By the way, we love our episode titles. We'd be cracking up at ourselves, but like affirmative asses, and that I don't know if there was a more fitting title of all 2023. Well, maybe it's besides the Britney 5 slaps in the face or whatever, 5 fingers, which was fucking funny. But it's like these people, they're assholes. Literally, they're disrupting our lives and making our lives harder for no damn reason except for the politics and egos of it. And so that's so frustrating. And so yeah, that's why we gotta get Z back in here. And honestly, we're looking for additional folks in that world just to see exactly what else we can do. Obviously, voting at the local level, voting all throughout the levels are so key. But what are other day-to-day things that we can do? So, community, if you got some ins and whomever, I mean, all the way up to Kamala, let us know, because we want to get that in here, because clearly life is way more difficult than it needs to be because of the Supreme Court and all these different laws and things like that, and laws that are being revoked, for like a better word,
or turned back.
But yeah, so no, I like that. That was a good segment, Jarrell. I like that one too. And let's see here for me, my guess, and again, it was, you know how I am, I'm gray, so I liked all of them. I'm like, ooh, Frank,
she really did, y'all.
Should be Jarvis. Oh, you want Jarvis? Okay, go take Jarvis. Okay, I'll take Z. Oh no, gayish and beautiful scrotums. Oh, which is a funny segment, by the way. But I chose Paris just because, again, just to hear his story about just living with HIV and just the what do you call it, gorgeous representation within the community and things like that. And then Dewan's rant of competing for what? So again, anytime there's a Dewan rant in it, I am all the way here for it, because that's just funny. But yeah, like, it's just cool just to see another person that looks like us, sounds like us, and seeing how he's navigating the world in corporate America and in the HIV space and things like that. So here's the little piece of our conversation. And again, this was an episode, if I can see here, and I don't change the thing. It's an episode. Oh, it's not. Oh, we never changed the thing. I'll tell you when we come back.
In Paris, how would you say this your own journey has impacted the impact that you're having within the communities that you're serving through, the activist work that you're doing, the community work that you're doing. Like how is your own coming to terms with your, not only your sexual identity, but also, these other descriptors of who you are, relative to your lived experience? How's that influenced the impact that you're driving in communities?
The word that comes to mind is representation, representation, representation. When people see a Black man, gay, living with HIV, living his best life, every day is not perfect, but pursuing his dreams. Oh, and gorgeous too. When they see all of that come together, the intersectionality of the gorgeousness.
That part of it.
We talked about this in last week's AYA.
Right.
We did.
Someone actually just reached out to me from Malaysia. They found me through Instagram, who was just diagnosed with HIV. And this person said, I see your activity on Instagram. And of course, Instagram's kind of a red carpet situation for some. So, all of it's not like, everything's wonderful, but I got some hope from seeing your stories, your pictures. I post my story living with HIV and that journey on Instagram as well. But he says, if you can do it, I can do it too. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'd say in a nutshell, that I'd love to be a representation that allows one to say, if he can do it, then perhaps I can do it too. Do what? Want myself. Do what? Fulfill my dreams and desires. Do what? Love myself. Do what? Take up space in this world as a Black man, as a gay man, and as a person living with HIV. If he can do it, so can I, because that was the example that I was given when I started in the work with the Legacy Project so long ago. So and last, I'll say, I've had people even share with me, I've never told anyone that I was living with HIV. Some of the folks that, because I really like to tell people that I'm living with HIV, in a sexual context. And I've had some say, I've never told anyone. And because you just shared that, I'm just going to tell you about me too. You're the first person I've told. That opens the door for great conversation around sexual health. And caring for oneself, a healthy sexuality, and what that could look like for them, and what that has looked like for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that representation. I love your answer too about it, representation being something that really drives it home for you and really helps show like that work, because a lot of people aren't just having just casual conversations, just about understanding, HIV and AIDS, and also just, not despelling. Despelling, is that the word I'm looking for? Dispelling. Yeah, but just some of the things that were ingrained in people from back then. You know what I'm saying? Like there's still so much work that needs to be undone, and so many people that needs to be re-educated on the realities and the fact of HIV and AIDS. So and it only happens when people really only find themselves learning about it when it either happens to them or happens to someone really close to them. Other than that, it's it's pretty much out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. And like even for myself, it took until literally within like a 12-month period, two of my best friends in my life in the middle of my 20s, where I'm supposed to be, spraying it out there, where I was like, hold on, I need to educate myself. I need to also practice, more protective sex and stuff like that. And I need to start thinking about my own health and stuff like that as well too, and to do my due diligence of understanding. And honestly, my best friends are some of the healthiest people I ever know. Like, don't get sick. The numbers come back from the doctors across the board, and I'm over here taking blood pressure medication, being like, girl, like I'm just trying not to fall over. It's crazy how not crazy, but it's just things like that people don't understand, that there are other things that people are going through that are just as lethal, that are taking people out just quick, but so many people want to have hangups on HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, which HIV and AIDS, I'd like to insert, thank you for that powerful testimony and truth. Thank you for normalizing or making an equal playing field with regard to, heart disease, or you said high blood pressure in this case, and HIV, have different impacts on the system, but we need not, exceptionalize HIV as this thing way out here. Well, carry out here, and everything else is okay over there. So there's that. HIV, for the listening audience, we may know this, HIV and AIDS are different. You know, HIV, when it's contracted, if it's gone untreated with medication, it can progress to AIDS. And so basically what that means, when it gets to the place of AIDS, it has destroyed the immune system in such a way that you're open to what we call opportunistic infections, because you have no immune system to fight that. That does not happen once you initially contract HIV. So, you know, and medication can bring you back from the place of your immune system being so decimated from the virus to a place where your immune system is strong again and able to fight off bacteria and just, you know, enemies that come into the body. So medication, I learned, is my miracle.
Yeah. And in that regard, that's where the also the term U equals U comes into play, correct? Like,
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know, folks might know this, but U equals U untransmittable, undetectable means untransmittable. Undetectable, what's that mean? That there's so little virus in the blood that it cannot be detected by test, and that it cannot be, and therefore it is untransmittable. It cannot be transmitted sexually. A step further, you can have condomless sex. And this is if you are taking your medication, HIV medication, as prescribed. Yeah. Stay in care with your healthcare provider to take your blood test, you know, twice a year, once a year, to make sure that the medication is still working as it should. But if you're taking it as prescribed, which is, you know, if you're taking pill medication, it's once a day. There's not many other, but we'll just say pills once a day, you know, most likely you're going to get to an undetectable status, which means you're not going to be able to transmit that virus there. So that's really important. So without a condom, of course I support condom uses, absolutely. But some are like, well, I'll just stop there.
But that's huge, because like I still feel like for the Black and brown communities, we're still contracting HIV at a higher rate than the white counterparts. And it's due to the lack of education within the community still. So it needs to be said multiple times, even though we preach it a lot on our podcast. If we need to do it every damn episode, we need to do it every damn episode, because we the lack of information, we got Google in our hands, even though we don't be using it that much on our podcast, but don't do better than us. But you got Google in your hands and everything like that. There's so much education out there that you shouldn't be this uneducated at the percentage differentiations between the two communities. So that's why we love having folks on the podcast to just re-educating, restating it, that U equals U, and just your options out there as well. But question for you, like in that regard though, due to the lack of education in our Black and brown communities, what can the pharmaceutical industry do better in your opinion? And I know you're in it, so maybe if you don't want to answer, you can say, I got a paycheck coming, bitch. Shut up, Carell. You can say that if you need to. But what else can the pharmaceutical industry do to better educate these communities that are still contracting HIV at a faster rate than others?
What I love to see, and particularly with the pharmaceutical company that I work with and others, I love to see these companies partnering with community-based organizations around the country and the world who have the influence in the communities and the rights in communities of color. Folks may not come, will be typically less receptive to someone with a pharma hat on, but they are more open to the church of their choice, the community center of their choice, the house ball community of their, et cetera. And so ARMA, with their resources, can continue to support these initiatives financially, continue that and bolster that as well, provide, be a source of accurate information around the virus, prevention, treatment, and eventually cure is, extremely helpful. So continue to do that and bolster that kind of commitment to these organizations, Black and brown communities. I would say do more of that, and do what is necessary to make the medications accessible to all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Price is a barrier for a lot of folks.
Exactly. Price is a barrier to a lot of folks. So that's one barrier, but do all that you can to make it accessible to all.
And talk about, I'd love to hear your perspective on personal accountability, because while I 100% agree that there can be other things being done from a systematic standpoint to provide education, this is not a new conversation that we've been having, so, and there have been treatments, there have been testing out, and there has been advocacy work within our communities for decades, since the 80s, consistently. So talk to us a little bit about, personal accountability, because, being feet on the streets, right, and in the trenches in the communities, working with Black and Brown communities, even in today's age where we have, preventative treatments to prevent HIV transmission, and supportive treatments, for those that have contracted HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. What is the role of personal accountability in this?
Right. So, and it's sexually transmitted infection. So the infections, and we don't use the word disease anymore, just infections. So that's not a read at all, but just for the listening audience, because terminology is important here. Great question. And I can answer that from many perspectives, but real quickly, I will say this. I go back to Jarrell's comment around the experience of some African American or Black folks in Seattle. When we look at, and that I experienced discrimination, this competition, Jarrell, that you had mentioned, when we look at life through the lens of the different barriers that Black and Brown folks that do face uniquely, if we're talking about obviously racism here, we can look at socioeconomic oppression, those challenges in our community. These are things that we as a people have got to address and get through oftentimes before we can address in a healthy and responsible way HIV. For instance, I was in New York some years ago, and we were talking about HIV, and this woman, we were in the Bronx, New York, and we were talking about what are some of the, what would encourage Black and Latinx communities to get involved with HIV clinical trials, prevention clinical trials. And this woman, so poignantly, she stood up and said, she says, I'm Black, I'm poor, I think she had like 6'5" kids, I'm a woman, I'm single. She said, I do care about HIV. She says, I do have my concerns and also fears, but it's at the bottom of my list because she is too busy thinking about survival and all the other determinants, we call them social determinants of health, or things that impact her health, that she just didn't have the capacity in her mind, in her world, to address HIV head on. So personal responsibility. It is all, I believe our sexual health is all of our personal responsibility. But I have to say it's multi-layered because we have to look at the systems that Black and Brown people are in that uniquely impact them and can make it harder to pursue HIV education, to disclose their HIV status, not giving one an out or excuse necessarily. Disclosure, that's a big topic. I don't think everyone needs to disclose. We can jump into that too. But, if we go back to the dynamic that Jarrell had mentioned, what we know is that Dr. Greg Mullen had produced written an article. He's a king in the HIV space, in the public health space, an article that's called Triply Cursed. It was talking about Black men, racism, homophobia, and sexual orientation. They have to get through those three things before, that those are three things that stop people from getting tested and disclosing their HIV status: racism, homophobia, and what was the one I said? Racism, homophobia, and
sexual orientation.
Yeah. So their own, so internalized homophobia, etc. So all those barriers are in the way of people, disclosing, even reaching out for help. Me, myself, it was faith, and my family. That's why I didn't like pursue, um, different avenues to learn more about my sexuality. So all I'd say is a long way of saying that's multi-layered, and we have to consider the unique experience of Black and brown folks first, or we call them social determinants of health, that impact, how their one's sexual behavior and their own health. So addressing that, let's stigma, racism, all this I just mentioned, addressing that. So, but then at the end of the day, yes, we've got to take responsibility, educate ourselves, get knowledge, and live healthily as we can.
And I'm very grateful that you said that too, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people think about. I think people often will judge someone like, oh, well, you should have thought about this, or you should have done this in order to, help prevent yourself from, maybe getting HIV or getting to the point of having AIDS, etc. But you're absolutely right. I mean, so many of us are just fighting daily battles just to get to the next day. It really does. And honestly, like, there are some things that at the bottom of your list that somehow, and sometimes often, just get forgotten about, and it's one thing to know about something, but it's another thing to practice, right? Because that means you have to take time to do something. And if you only have so many hours of the day, that means you're taking time for something else.
Right.
Right. And to your point too, is like a lot of the things in play when it comes to the Black and brown, communities, as far as like, being able to even just, have basic health care, to be able to have a primary physician that you can, talk to and see on a regular basis, to be able to go get testing, to have that type of relationship where you feel comfortable. Because that's another thing that we got to talk about too, is that level of vulnerability, to be able to open yourself up to someone, to be able to talk about those things.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And there's so much layers, and you really just kind of opened my eyes, and I was like, damn, this is an onion, bitch, and we are peeling.
Yeah, we had Outback.
Right. We can't, there's some would say, Black and brown African Americans represent 14% of the U.S. population, yet 52% of those who are living with HIV in the United States. And so we look at how is a smaller amount of, the U.S. population, ethnic population, how is it that HIV exists, disproportionately in that group? And, there are unique determinants of health, historical racism, socioeconomic oppression. A list goes on and on that have made it harder for us to access health care in this country and be informed. We saw this with COVID, and so it's not because we have a bunch of people who are having, studies show that it's not about riskier sex, and I don't like using that word, and that's an antiquated word anyway. It's not about that, but we look at the different barriers, but at the end of the day, Dewan, yes, personal responsibility. But there are unique challenges that allow one to take personal responsibility like they may want to.
Yeah. And I would say, honestly, too, that maybe part of the accountability for myself is just making sure that I am having these conversations with people around me, and I am, changing the stigma and doing my due diligence to make sure that, those who I have an ear to are comfortable enough to be able to come to me to have conversations. They're okay with having these conversations, and that I'm also encouraging them to do the same with other people as well too. And I think that, to me, would be something that I can do as accountability, not necessarily about figuring like, well, how can I do? Well, just simply talking about it.
Absolutely. I was going to say, with regard to living with HIV, who would want me? What's my question? I would say, in talking to different groups, schools, etc., to kind of generalize the conversation around HIV, because most can't relate with living with HIV, but they can relate to feeling unwanted in their life. Can all think of a time you felt unwanted. And so we talk about that. I talk about how I felt unwanted, but then the conversation progresses to, okay, so we know how it feels to feel unwanted. When have we felt wanted? So when we talk about when we have felt wanted, what that looks like, I said, so let's now work to help those around us feel wanted. And it may sound simplistic, but if we worked hard to help each other feel wanted, we could address racism, we could address homophobia, we could address so much, because we are working to help others feel wanted, which creates an environment for people to disclose their status when necessary, to seek out, healthcare and talk about HIV, to come out as gay. So yeah.
Where can folks, if folks are listening to this, where can folks either seek additional education? PrEP is a big thing. There's a lot of opportunities, different avenues to get that. What's the best way in your mind to further educate themselves, get the support systems that they need, and potentially, if they want to go on PrEP or need medication, to potentially get it at cheaper rates than they're currently being told or currently obtaining it now?
Correct. So, within one's region, you can Google your health department, local health department there, and, type in, HIV and see what service they have there. You can also, put in the search bar, AIDS Service Organization, or ASO, and you can, see what organizations serve populations who are living with HIV or who have questions about it. On a national scale, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC.org, is another, link that one can go to. Or you can hit me up, Paris Mullen, on my Instagram, and I'll be willing to answer questions and have dialogue with you. But I would say Google, first your health department in your area, or Google, AIDS Service Organization or HIV organizations, near me, and see what pops up.
Perfect.
I can't wait to meet you, Paris.
I cannot
wait to meet you in Seattle. I cannot
wait to meet you. Absolutely. We didn't even talk about surviving sexual violence. Maybe that's on another.
We're gonna have to have you back. That's what we're gonna have to do, because there's a lot. And then also Q Care Plus. We had Q Care Plus on here. What, 2 years ago, probably almost at this point, and now I'm starting to see them everywhere. Friend. So they're great company. So there's many avenues to definitely get the education, the medicine and that you need to make sure that we're, not living uneducated and unknown and things like that. And yes, I know there's always this vulnerability piece, but just know at least you got your aunties here, you got Paris here, that if you need to drop in the DMs, drop in our DMs, and we'll definitely help you get the support that you need. So yeah, Paris. And by the way, that was episode 221. So check out that entire episode. That entire episode was a great one as well. But just a little nuggets throughout that. And again, we got to do a little curiosity with him and talk about his square cut Speedos and things like that, because he's a good looking man. Let's not even lie. So we're like, come on now, Paris, give us the inside scoop. What's going on? Speedos and gnaw. But yeah, no. Anytime we can just get additional, again, the spectrum of us. I always just adore those conversations and those episodes.
And plus, the conversation around just HIV awareness and education around that is still very much needed. Like, there are segments of our community that are just uninformed, and or the information that they have is just limited. And so the more that we can produce and bring forth content that is supporting our own education and awareness around what resources are available in this particular space, the better.
Yeah, I agree. And so I'm going to end on here for you two. Are there any dream guests, obviously Beyonce and things like that, but any dream guests in 2024 that's top of mind for you? Maybe Communitea can help us manifest this.
Beyonce.
You're right. Well, we know Beyonce. She don't be doing interviews, but yeah.
You know who I want? Well, you know who would be full circle for me?
Who's that?
Sierra. That would just be full circle.
If we get Sierra, I ain't telling you. You're just gonna hop on and Sierra gonna be there. That's what's gonna happen if that ever goes out. Oh my God.
No, but another person though, Megan Thee Stallion. I would love to have Meg. I would love to. I think we would just have so much fun.
Yeah.
And she'll fit in just great with us.
Oh,
and I would love to get some of the tea, because I feel like she knows some things, and she'd be like, so anyways, and this one time I was hanging out with this person. Like, I think would be fantastic.
And that's my body goals if I was a woman.
Honey.
Body goals. I'm trying to think who my number. I mean, Beyonce, obviously, but I mean, there's pie in the sky stuff, and then there's like smart goals, if you will. You know, I think right now, because some of it got to be realistic, and it's hard to get to Beyonce. Like it's like, damn, Oprah damn near don't get Beyonce no more either. But I think mine right now is Emil from Native Gun.
Yeah.
Like, I think just his insight and just his impact on culture for the last 30 years as a gay Black man would be huge. So Emil, I'm putting this as a clip. We need you on, boo. And Sean Bankhead. That's
that part.
Sean was supposed to be on here like a year ago. That's what I was like, I ain't gonna say nothing, but yeah, he was supposed to be on here like a year ago, but he busy, so I don't blame him.
There's like a whole
rightfully so.
There's a whole lot of just queer celebrities and people of importance that I think that we could probably rattle off in an instant. But I think at the end of the day, it's really about making sure that we are we obviously want to have those kind of celebrities in here, but at the end of the day, it's really about the voice and it's about the message. And I think one of the things that we've done a really phenomenal job of, and with a lot of support from our community, and not only listening and supporting and sharing and surfacing and helping make connections, but we've brought on people that are not just about their fame, but it's about the work that they're doing, and the work that they're doing is what's really the subject matter of a lot of these conversations. So, just be on the lookout for just more amazing stuff coming in this year.
I got one more to put out there.
Yes.
Kiki Palmer. I would love to also
you have said that one.
That would be cute.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That would be cute.
Please.
I agree. Yeah. So community, if you got some connections, connect us. But if not, keep rocking with us, and we appreciate you for literally 2023 was our best year yet again. So we keep saying that every year, keep continuing to grow. So that's awesome. And so appreciate you all. And anything else on your hearts and minds?
I'm just going to say, stay tuned, stay engaged, and share. Let everybody know what you are listening to. Point them to us, because every little bit helps.
I do have one thing I want to say, and this is just, I just want y'all to know that I've been growing. I've been doing a lot of growing because this is also my birthday, and I let a whole episode go by without mentioning.
And I had it on my notes here.
So I just want everyone to know that on my mind is just don't forget to wish your bitch a happy birthday.
Happy birthday. That is true.
Happy birthday, baby.
Tomorrow is your birthday.
Yes.
And I better say happy birthday to Daniel, my brother, because he'd be like, "Hey, you ain't said my name neither. It's my birthday." Well, happy birthday, brother. Happy birthday, brother. It's real. What you do? Like, you gonna turn up? You turn up every year for your birthday.
No, I don't turn up. Because New Year's, I say it every year. New Year's just takes so much out that by the time my birthday comes around, ain't nobody trying to
want to sleep. Right. It's like, let me chill on the couch.
Well, let me just make sure I take my vitamins and keep it moving.
keep these legs strong, and these hips girl, I can't even say it. These hips limber.
And them hands, legs, and ass washed. We'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.